Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars and Galaxy, watching all Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And
I'm Buck.
Today, yes, he spoiled it before we got a chance to. Our good friend Buck O'Brien is here. We're talking about, of course, Solo, a Star Wars story, 40 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. The second 40-minute chunk of Solo, a Star Wars story. We're so excited to have Buck on. We're so excited to have... I know you're a big fan of this movie. I think probably bigger than both of us, honestly. And I'm excited to hear your takes on this part of the film, which has some really great stuff in it. Jacob and I think during our last episode came out a bit saltier about Solo in general than I expected us to. And I feel like this segment, for me, I have a lot more good things to say about. Because
this is probably my favorite 40 minutes of the movie, yeah.
I think it's probably, if honestly, if we could start at an hour and go to 140, like an hour 40 minutes, I think that's probably it. Because I love like the escaping Kessel and like the Savarine stuff. I think the Savarine stuff before the first light arrives, when it gets like really confusing, is my favorite. But meeting Lando, L337, all the stuff we have. Yeah. This episode that I won't talk about too much because I'll get into it in our summaries. A lot of good stuff. But before we get into that, I do have a question to ask you, Buck, which is, how did you get into Star Wars?
I was born in 1986. Star Wars art was already like ubiquitous even by the time I was born. So it was like, I don't remember a time without Star Wars. I had pillowcases and toys and things for as long as I can remember. I do remember my first time seeing most of the episode 4. So I had to be like 5 or 6, and my dad let me stay up late one night, and he made his awful popcorn because he liked it with the popcorn kernels floating in a vat of butter. But we laid on the floor on some blanket and some pillows and watched the movie. And I know I fell asleep somewhere in the middle, and I woke up towards the end. I was 5 or 6, and I remember that vaguely. And it wasn't really until the special editions that I really fell in love with them, and I was 10, right? And it was like Valentine's Day, I think, that year. I still have my ticket, like my ticket stub. It's Valentine's Day that year. I finally got to see episode 4 on the big screen, and then later that year, we were really poor, so we waited until it was like episode 5 was in the $2 theater to take me and some of my friends for my birthday to go see that. I don't think I saw Return of the Jedi on the big screen until this year, legitimately. I fell asleep during the marathon during episode 9 because by the time you get through 6 movies, you're asleep.
That's a massive undertaking. Respect.
Oh, it was, I couldn't do it. I thought I was. I'm not young anymore, guys. I'm 37.
I was going to say that we're young enough so that I can say that I don't think I've seen any of the original trilogy on the big screen.
Same here, yeah.
And they're a bit like I was bummed I missed The Empire Strikes Back 40th. That was a big bummer for me, but being able to catch the Return of the Jedi 40th that meant I now finally have seen all of them like legitimately on a big screen. So that was awesome. But then like after seeing episode 4 in 97 with special editions, which were my version of Star Wars, so I don't really get the Han shot first, the special editions suck, I don't get all that. Like, it's a version, that's a version, they're all the same to me. I don't care. It's Star Wars. None of the changes change the story. It's the same story, no matter what. I got into the books. I read books with my mom. My mom is a huge nerd, and we read a lot. We read all the books up to a point. I think she stopped when we started getting into the New Jedi Order books. But we read the X-Wing Squadron books are like her favorite Star Wars novels, and she kept trying to spoil the books for me, and I was like, "Stop it, woman, stop!" And yeah, I've been addicted to the Star Wars novels and comics because my mom was reading them with me, or would get me them as presents for Easter and Christmas and my birthday and graduation presents. Yeah.
And then as a follow-up to that, the other question we'd like to ask, what got you into Star Wars podcasting, content creation, the surrounding ecosystem?
Or I guess for you it would be like, because you don't really like, and I don't want to speak for you or anything, what got you into the fandom side of the internet, I guess?
It's hard to find people I like in real life that like in the area that you can connect with. I think it's easier to connect with people online. and it sucks because a lot of my friends live far away. You know that I don't have friends here. It's sometimes harder. I grew up in the church, and then I was in the Marine Corps, and I don't really have connections to those parts of my life now because our morals don't align. By pride, don't really sit well with either the military or religious groups, and so when you're alone in the military, you're a passion. Everyone knew I was a big Star Wars nerd and a comic book geek, and um, so when you're on deployment, I just downloaded a bunch of podcasts, and I would listen to them endlessly because I could only listen to the audiobooks so many times. And the audiobooks back then, when I was in the Marine Corps, were mostly abridged versions, which I hate. Give me the whole book. Like, why the hell would you give me a shorter version of this? Like, I get all the reasons why, but I still didn't like it. So podcasting became a big thing, and I didn't really start building relationships until I met Brian Barry formerly of Pink Milk, and we had started interacting online. And then a few years ago during COVID, for May the 4th, his family and my family, or me and my husband and my dog, that's my family, I got to guest on Good Morning America from the comfort of our homes as the audience. And we met then, and he and I became really good friends. We talked pretty much every day, and that started getting me into the chat rooms and hanging out with different podcasts and learning about Bombadcast. And we had Skywalking Through the League and shows like that, and meeting everybody at Celebration Anaheim last year. You guys sat in front of me.
I was gonna say, meeting everybody. Asterisk. Let's tell the story now.
Yeah, you guys were literally sitting directly in front of me.
Let's tell the story now. Let's tell the story now, so I can get the embarrassment behind me, because I feel like I'm never going to live this down. Which is that I was literally so close to meeting Buck at Celebration Anaheim. And it just didn't happen.
You couldn't have been any closer than that.
I was literally sitting in front of. We were literally sitting in front of him for the.
In my lap, guys. The chairs were that close.
And then, like, legitimately, like, we could have said hi. And then I remember, like, I think it was Mark, actually, I think, who said on the panel, or no, I think it was Brian. It was actually Brian. It was like, who pointed to somebody in the crowd and was like, "Oh, unlike you guys, Alex and Molly." And Jacob and my head just turned, like, as quick as possible. And from that point on, there was no reaching me.
Yeah, okay, so it was really funny because right before the Pink Milk panel was the Triad of the Force panel, and that was an amazing panel, which I missed. Shh, don't tell them. I love those guys.
We almost did.
Brian from Pink Milk said he was afraid that no one was going to show up, which I told him, like, bro, like, it's going to be packed, a full house. People were standing up in the back.
Was.
And then he said he wanted it to feel like a party, so Brandon and I bought party favors, like different like party gifts, and we were just passing them out to everybody before the panel, and then afterwards, everyone was trying to go up and say hi to them, and they were trying to, like, usher people out because of the next panel. But everyone went up to say hi to Alex and Molly, who I briefly met then, and then ran into them again during. We were both going to the food trucks outside. I was like, Alex, Molly, and they're like, hi. We're trying to. Everyone's so busy. You're just like doing all the things, and the Pink meetup, and going out to dinner with people afterwards, and like running over to Disneyland to go to Batu after Celebration, because we didn't stay all of Sunday. We wanted to, but we were just like, we've seen everything already, and let's go to Disneyland. And running into people building lightsabers and meeting with people at Oga's Cantina and being like, I know you. It was just that year was fantastic. I think top 3 moments of my life, but after meeting my husband and then getting married.
I will say, I think Celebration is like one of my best memories for the last 6-7 years.
It was a real special weekend. It was a really special time. I agree.
It was. I think we should get into
Star Wars
Solo, which actually, Buck, before we get into this fully, I wanted to ask what your experience with Solo has been, and specifically why you love this movie so much.
Okay. Solo came out shortly before my sister left town. My sister randomly met a guy and then went to see him one Christmas and never came back. They're married now. And I literally have not seen my sister since. But one of our favorite things is to watch Solo. And sometimes when we get on the phone, we will literally we went and saw it together the first time, twice actually that first weekend. And anytime she comes over, we put it on. And it's like our comfort movie. It's our go-to. And whenever our niece and nephew come over, it's one of those movies we put on because it's easy to watch, but like the family loves it. I don't know. My family just really likes this movie. Like my mom enjoys it. I don't know what it is about this movie particularly that my family loves so much, but it is one of our go-to comfort films, and so it always makes me feel very happy. But they love Alden. They love Donald Glover. They love L3. Even mom, who's super religious, still loves L3. I don't know what it is. And also, I think all of the Easter eggs were written in the movie just for me. Like I feel like every single one of them ticked off of it's something that I've loved.
We'll get to the Easter eggs. I think this chunk is probably the most Easter egg filled chunk of the film, honestly.
I have to admit, I caught a few this time around that I didn't.
I was gonna say, I felt every 5 minutes I'm like, okay, there's another one. And specifically, there's another batshit one that I never thought would make it into this movie to begin with. We'll talk about this later. Eris Kasi?
That's the number one.
I was gonna say
number one Easter egg. But the fact that the design of Kessel it's more or less from the old legends. It's not exactly the way it is, but it's close enough that my mom knew exactly what it was when we were watching the movie. She's like, "That Kessel?" And I'm like, "Yes, that is Kessel." Like, how did you know that? I'm like, yeah. Because she doesn't really pay attention. Like, she's older now. She doesn't really pay attention when we're watching movies. She's usually the one talking. And she knew what it was because she had read a lot of the books from that era. Yeah.
But let's go I'll do the summary of what happens in this chunk of Solo. In this chunk of Solo, we pick off after the Vandor heist has failed with Val and Rio dead. It is now just Beckett, Han, and Chewbacca. Beckett reveals to Han Chewbacca that this was a deal they were working on with Crimson Dawn, one of the major crime syndicates in the galaxy. They meet up with the Crimson Dawn's control ship called the First Light, which is on Vandor because it just needs to be, and it's just there. They board and meet with the leader of Crimson Dawn, a man named Dryden Voss, who was just finished dealing with the Imperial governor. And by dealing with, of course, we mean killing.
Great answer.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Han on the ship while they're on the First Light while they're waiting for Dryden to be ready. Han bumps into Qi'ra, who was sold by Lady Proxima to Crimson Dawn and has been working as one of Dryden's top lieutenants ever since. For more details on that, read E.K. Johnston's Crimson Climb. And they managed to catch up before Han, Chewbacca, and Beckett are escorted up to Dryden's office. Dryden wants to kill them very bad, but they manage to talk their way out of it and persuade him that they should be allowed another chance to get the 100 keys of coaxium that they lost for him by doing this ridiculous raid on an Imperial vault on the planet of Kessel for those 100 keys of coaxium. They need a ship. They go to Fort Ipso on Vandor, where Qi'ra seeks out an old friend, a card player and smuggler and scoundrel named Lando Calrissian. Han tries to win Lando's ship, the Millennium Falcon, from him in a game of Sabacc, which in a game of Corellian Spike, thank you, Big Chungus, in a game of Corellian Spike, it does not work because Lando cheats and has an extra card up his sleeve. But Lando then runs to Qi'ra, who convinces him and his social justice warrior droid L337. And by the way, when I say social justice warrior, I mean that in the most positive of ways. Yes. Advocating for droid rights and freedom for all droids subjugated by oppression of human subjugation.
Can I get you anything?
What?
I said, can I get you anything? Equal rights?
Equal rights. They then go to Kessel, where they pull off this elaborate scheme, which involves Qi'ra disguising herself as we're going to get to that title later, and and Beckett also being disguised, and Han and Chewbacca being sent in as fake slaves, so that L3, Han, and Chewbacca can stage a revolt from within, which they managed to do, sparking out an all-out riot with the enslaved people and subjugated droids on Kessel. Lando is watching the Falcon, but he hears the commotion and goes out to help, and that's roughly where we ended this. Am I correct about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
you
right.
are.
What happens in this one?
What's great about this for me in this segment is I didn't have to see the demise of one of my favorite new characters, so that makes me very happy.
Yeah, we're gonna have to deal with that next time, I think.
I will not be here.
You missed L3 death. You just got out of it. I assume that's who you're talking about, right? Yeah. But let's start at the beginning with this line, which I love, which is such a fantastic line. Beckett's line to Han: "You have any idea what it's like to live with a price on your head?" Which I think is a really good way and sophisticated way of foreshadowing what we know about Han, basically for the rest of his life.
I agree.
I think that Solo...
It's his introduction, right? He has a price on his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Solo in a lot of ways pairs really well. Obviously, it came out 6 months after Last Jedi, and I'm not going to say it doesn't pair well with that movie, because it does. But I think specifically with Force Awakens, where I think there are a lot of reflections of young Han and old Han that are like really interesting. And of course, they were developed pretty simultaneously to each other. Solo came 2.5 years after Force Awakens, so I assume there were some ideas. And Kasdan co-wrote both of them.
I think if Han was Force sensitive, there would definitely be a scene in this of some famous smuggler of bygone years, maybe Hondo saying, "Han, these are your first steps," something along those lines. Because there's a lot of moments in this movie that feel exactly like that.
I wish Hondo made a cameo.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That would take this movie to a whole new level.
And that's that's actually the next line I had written down, which is that Beckett line: "If you come with me and show your face, if they don't kill you, you're in this life for good."
Yep.
Which,
and he never, as much as he tries to step away, he's definitely a character who walks both lines, because it becomes so ingrained in who he is as a character that being a father is difficult for him. Being a husband is difficult for him.
Being a husband is difficult.
Right.
Being a general is difficult for him. Like,
it also makes him a better general in a lot of ways, because he doesn't do things the way that the rebellion would do. He does things a little differently. He has connections that the rebellion definitely needs, but like, it definitely makes him different.
There's this great symmetry in my mind between that's not a thermal detonator, that's a rock, you made the clicking sound with your mouth, and afraid I was gonna leave without giving you a goodbye kiss, and then going to what was the second time.
Yes.
Like there's that through line specifically in the films of Han Solo that I think is just done so immaculately well.
You definitely see Han, as much as and Qi'ra says it later about who he is. He wants to be the bad guy, but the best he can pull off is being a scoundrel. Right? Like, this is the best he can. Fine. He's a rogue and a scoundrel, and that's the best that he can pull off for being the bad guy.
Yeah. For the better or for the worse. Yeah.
Yes. and I think they try to pull elements of that out for Poe. That doesn't really come off very well in the sequels. You need something like that. I think we can talk about not really having that character in the prequels, Poe filling that role in the sequels, and why that kind of element of the rogue scoundrel character is necessary sometimes for good Star Wars stories. Cassian Andor has that he wants to be the bad guy, but at his core he's a good guy. He's trying to do the right thing. He wants to take care of his friends. He wants to take care of his family, but at the same time he's both him and Han are constantly trying to be selfish to get away, to make a little cash, and it's interesting. Really. They can't turn away from doing the right thing
themselves to do it, which is interesting.
I was gonna say, but I feel like I feel like that struggle is a bit more like, not to take away anything from Cassian, but I feel like Cassian gets convinced quicker than Han does, because it takes 2 arcs of that show, and then he's in Narkina 5 basically, and of course with Nemec's thing, we're seeing that he can't sleep. Like Narkina 5 is when he really like gets ingrained into the cause, whereas Han in this movie, I don't really feel is in any sort of cause at any time.
Yeah, he walks away from the Wookiees when Chewie goes to help, right? And he walks back to give him the weapon, but he still walks away. There are slaves who are all around him, and I don't feel like him rescuing Chewie from the Imperials on Mimban is as intentional as it is, I think, in Legends, and but I love it. It's such a perfect introduction for the 2 of them, and then of course they're showered together later.
Yeah,
memorable moment, to say the least.
We covered that last time, and
right.
We
but like
that.
They quickly become like the best of friends, and it is so perfect. The moment where he's like, "You're 190, you look great." Like they become like, it's instantaneous. It takes no effort for them to be like in sync. But Han is still not the good person that I think Chewie is. And it's interesting to see Chewie stick by Han when we've seen Chewie in the Clone Wars be captured and have to escape with Ahsoka. Like the fact that Chewbacca has met Ahsoka Tano, he has met Master Yoda, and he chooses to hang out with Han fucking Solo. He has met some of the best people that we think of when we think of Star Wars characters, and he's like, nah, my best buddy is going to be Han Solo, because
it's going to be this guy.
Yeah, this guy.
I think that kind of goes to show what you were saying earlier in a way, Buck, where Han may think he's doing what he's doing with Chewbacca for a certain set of reasons, but maybe he's actually being more altruistic than he thinks he is.
Absolutely.
Or maybe Chewie sees that in him.
And I think that's like a continual thing. Qi'ra sees it. Qi'ra calls him out. You're the good guy. Later, sorry to jump ahead, but
no, don't worry about it.
It's a reoccurring thing with him, though, right? Because it's something that clearly Obi-Wan sees when they meet in the cantina. It's something that obviously Leia sees. Otherwise, I don't think she would have been attracted to him. If he was clearly the scoundrel that he was meant to be, he would have left after the Battle of Yavin, right? But he sticks around for 4 years. Granted, one of those years he was frozen, but like he sticks around.
That guy is, again, he's ultimately the good guy. And I think
that's what I think. What we love him, because we don't all get to be the clear good guy like Luke Skywalker, right? Like, we don't Princess Leia. Some of us are a little bit more roguish, a little more scoundrelish. We don't really like to follow the rules. We like to, I say we because the fandom. Like, we may not always make the right choices, but at the end of the day, Han definitely represents the idea that we can always choose to do the right thing at the end and come back and get the girl and get the money.
Absolutely.
He has his cake and eats it too, a little bit.
Yes, he does.
In this one.
And it's okay sometimes.
Very happy ending for him. Yeah, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Anyway, I will just quickly say, just because I want to point this out, because I will never stop doing this with this season. Sorry, Jacob, I know you disagree with me on this one, but John Powell's score, goddammit. So good. So goddamn good in this.
Sorry, let me finish that thought, and then I have a thought as well.
So goddamn good in this film. One of the things I actually really like is that I think Powell's score, in a certain sense, because of the grandiosity and scale of it, it helps me a little bit with some of the questions of, look, from the minute this film was announced, there were concerns about it, and some of them were legitimate, and some of them, I believe, were taken way too far. But the root of the concern was the relevance of this film. The toxic way that manifested is, who wants this? Who said we need this? Which is stupid. Nobody said we needed this. We're getting it.
Anyway. Who asked for this? Which literally everybody from the early 80s to
Yeah.
The year it happened, everyone was asking for this. It
But-
may not have been high on the list, but if you had polled fans, it was pretty high up there.
Yeah.
It happened
But-
constantly.
Yeah, but there was a question for me because you tend to think of the films as these huge events, and they seem to be moving back to that more with the new movies they're doing now with NJO and with the Foundation of the Jedi and with the culmination of the Grogu saga. And I think, and Powell's score, weirdly enough, and a bunch of other things with this film, helped me with the idea that even though this is an origin story, this could be just an origin story for Han Solo. It is so much bigger than that. It has that intergalactic feel that all of the other films do, even if it might not be as large in scale.
It feels like the pulpy adventure, which, you know, like I don't know why anyone doesn't love this movie, because like it feels like an adventure we would have gotten in the 80s. It feels like something we would have gotten before. It doesn't have to be like, oh yay, like we defeated the Empire, we blew up the Death Star. Like it still is just, this is an adventure, it's fun, let's enjoy ourselves. Popcorn films are fun. They don't need to be perfect. No film needs to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect film. There are flaws in everything, and that's part of what makes these things beautiful. And John Powell's music does the job that I think John Williams' music does in the first movie, which the story of the first movie is fine. The pacing is a little odd. You're right, it had to be re-edited during the original theatrical run to make it work. Everyone seems to forget that the original Star Wars needed to be re-edited like right away. But John Williams' music did the job, and he does a song for this score, which is fantastic. And then John Powell is able to get such a good spirit of doing his own thing while also giving us nods to what John Williams had done before, including the Imperial stingers when we see the Star Destroyer later in the next segment.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's one of the best. We don't hear it outside of episode 4, and being able to hear it in this movie, like, oh, so good. And reminding us that we are in the dark times.
Right? We are in the dark times. We are smack dab in the middle of it right now.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Solo happening so close together.
Yep.
It's crazy. I love so many of the songs in this, and he chooses to do some really fun stuff. The Chicken in the Pot.
I was literally just about to say that. We were literally just about to get to it. Chicken in the Pot slaps.
So
every time Star Wars gives us in-universe, non-classical music, diegetic music in the narrative. Chicken in the Pot, Igyaka.
Yes.
Like, whatever you have, whatever it may be. Niamos in Andor.
Yes. Those are all on my. I was listening to that yesterday because it was Life Day. Happy belated Life Day.
Happy belated Life Day, everybody.
And I was like, I have a diegetic. My playlist is Star Wars from a certain point of view, jukebox edition, and all the diegetic music you find in Star Wars is on that playlist.
I just now have Niama looping in my Niama's looking.
But the diegetic music in Star Wars is just exotic enough to feel like it comes from another galaxy, while also just being like an earworm. You just can't get some of those beats out of your head. You're like, all right, this is really good. And
I'll say that John Williams started off the tradition really freaking well. We've talked about a lot of the modern examples. Cantina Band, fantastic. Mine, for me, and by the way, this is another area where I totally agree with you on the special editions book. I've heard Loptinek.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't care for it. Jedi Rocks is fantastic.
Jedi Rocks is the better choice. I think that both are good songs. I get Loptinek stuck in my head all the time, and I will literally just be random. If I'm like cleaning around the house, I'll start singing it randomly a lot of times. That's like the one Star Wars song that I'll just be like, just like it is. I'm like, oh wait, it's embarrassing.
It's the exact opposite for me, because I've like legitimately like in my head, because I am like one of my other great passions other than Star Wars is music. I've literally tried to analyze the chords in that song in my head. In Jedi Rocks in my head, I'm like, so that's that there's a time signature there, all right, and that's an interesting chord change. But like specifically, that's the dun, 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 dun. It was so good. I love Jedi Rock so.
Yes.
I can hum a lot of the songs, and Chick in the Pot, because it's a duet and it's a duet with a toad, it just makes it so much better. It's like doing some of those fun like Art Deco-y designs that are very like 1920s jazz. I love it.
Yeah,
let's fucking get into the. Oh, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I was gonna say before the conversation moves 10 miles away. I do think, going off of what you said, Buck. Yeah, and relating as well to the duet we get. I think that Solo is at its best when it just lets itself be the campy, pulpy, and happy-go-lucky. Not happy-go-lucky, but more of a campy, pulpy 80s style adventure film.
It is a little more happy-go-lucky. It's before Han Solo has his heart broken, so he still has hope. And that's the thing that is, I think people tend to forget, is like how many of us were before we were broken, and it will be a thing, a common thread for most men, those of us born as men, getting our heart broken by a woman at some point in our lives usually destroys us. So we do not normally know how to handle that, and it is very clear that there is a delineation
pre and post
who Han is before this moment, right? Like when Qi'ra leaves him, Han is broken and he becomes jaded, and he closes his heart off to the idea of love, and he obviously doesn't let that that open again for another 12 years, right? 12, 13 years with Leia, and it takes her 3 years to break through. I love you, I know, right? Like,
it takes like a long time,
almost a decade and a half for that ice to cool because of the moments that happen in this movie. So when we are at this moment, Han has been working towards something for 3 years. And as someone who has been enlisted, and I wasn't engaged on my first deployment, and all you can think about is getting back. And then immediately after returning from a deployment and breaking out off an engagement and all, I get the heartbreak and how that destroys you. And I did not recover for the longest time. Like the year after coming back from my first deployment was probably the worst year of my life. And Han Solo, I think, is gonna go through a period that I want those stories like post this movie, because there's no way that Han isn't going to be an asshole for the next year and a half, even to Chewie. Like I want a movie where Han is a dick and he is an asshole to Chewie, and Chewie and him like part ways because of a thing, but then they have to come back together. And I want that kind of story for Han. We see how he becomes the jaded person that he is. Clearly the intention was that this was not the first story, right? Absolutely. Han has to become the man, and you change over time. Like that's 10 years, it's an entire decade. He should not be the Han Solo we know when we meet him. He needs to have a journey. This is one of the things
this is one of the things that sets him down the path.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing this bubbly, happy, I got another plan is perfectly who I think Han would be at this age.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. I don't think Chewbacca would become friends with the Han that we meet in episode 4. I don't think that's not the man that Chewie would stick around with.
Yeah, I was going to just jump off of Buck's point about Chicken in the Pot. I want to talk about the Glup Shitto game this film brings. God. Because
Doc Ondar isn't even seen. Doc Ondar isn't even seen in this, and he's still like the Glup Shitto of this scene.
I didn't even think of Doc Ondar as necessarily as Glup Shitto, although I did bring it up because specifically I forgot that they also brought up Batu in this movie. Man, they were plugging Galaxy's Edge a lot.
You couldn't even fire your way to Black Spire without me, right? Is that the line?
Oh, yeah, Black Spire. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep.
I'm like, God damn it, they were plugging that so much.
Yeah.
By the way, everybody, go visit the Galactic Star.
Okay.
Too soon.
Were either of these things? I can't remember the timing. Did we have Galaxy's Edge when this movie came out?
No,
I don't think so.
Wow, nope. That's why it felt new. I was like, I do not remember.
If it came out, was it that summer? Was it that summer?
I think it was that fall.
Oh,
Batu East, I think opened.
Oh no, it was the spring of the next year. It was May. It was late May. 2019.
Okay,
I just looked it up. So yeah,
I keep forgetting that this was in 2018 and not 2019.
Yeah. Yep.
Time get weird in 2020, if anybody remembers.
Yeah.
we haven't
recovered.
I certainly don't remember. Yes, but I wanted to point out 3 of my favorite Glups from these, which is, of course, my man Qi'ra, the security guard at the First Light, and of course, our people. Two of maybe the greatest Star Wars names I've ever heard: Lulio Primoc and Alrodia Ventifoli. Like, whoever came up with names and these concepts for characters deserve raises. Deserve massive raises.
Well, we know that names come later.
Yeah,
they design and then after they decide after the movie or somewhere they percolate. The names don't always come right away.
Yeah, but still,
Pablo has been quite clear about it. His process is whenever the name pops into his head or when he absolutely needs it is when they name the character. The names are amazing.
Yeah, the names are amazing. Pablo has a talent for that, and Matt Martin and all the other people.
I think they've gotten better at naming since the George Lucas days. They're not always quite on the nose, unless it's THERM SCISSORPUNCH, which I think is the coolest name ever.
Yeah, it is.
But we're not really as always on the nose as Elon Sleazebag Gano, right? Sleazebag Gano, he's a sleazebag. We get it. Yeah,
we get it. The guy who's way too brutal is named Savage. Okay, let's be real. Let's be.
He's savage, oppressive.
Yeah, let's be real a little bit, guys. No, but my thing is, okay, so we have this woman with this weird thing on her mouth, then a head in the jar, and I just wrote down, I'm like, what does she have over her mouth? Is she human? Is she a separate species? Does the species need that? What's Lulio Primoc's deal? Why is he in that jar? Can he survive outside? That's one of my favorite things about these background characters and why I love Star Wars universe so much, is that you have all these questions based on literally something for 20 seconds.
Let's look, right before or right after or right around this, time is relative, seeing a concept that should have been in Rogue One. I don't think we see them in Rogue One. The decraniated.
Oh, the decraniated? Yeah.
The decraniated. And we don't actually end up seeing any of them in Rogue One, do we? I don't think we do.
I don't think we did. I always thought
there were a lot of decraniated images.
Yeah.
There was cards and reference books.
I don't think we actually ever did.
Yeah, and so our first experience with...
Which honestly good, because those things creep me the fuck out.
That's what is so creepy, but we just see one in the movie, and you're just like, where the fuck is the rest of the woman's head? She clearly no longer has a brain. She doesn't have eyes. It's literally now...
I'm almost certain
it's a box
I'm almost certain I've had dreams, I've had nightmares about the decraniated. They're fucking terrifying.
No one brings attention to it, right?
I don't get scared by much in Star Wars. It's really, it's the decraniated, it's brainworms, and end of list. And that's the end of list.
Darth Noctis and Shadow.
I think another...
Darth Noctis is terrifying.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, what did you say?
Darth Noctis from Shadow of the Sith. That whole thing.
With that book, unfortunately.
That's the end of that book is literally the scariest thing I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
Then we get to Han bumping into Qi'ra again after all these years, which I love this scene. And I remember some people saying that this scene, this dialogue from the scene felt a bit stilted, and they associated that due to the reshoots. I didn't get that.
It's always
funny how it is if you see someone like that years later. That's like,
and in a situation they're in, because Han is in a precarious situation. He is in the lion's den, right? He knows he's in deep shit. He doesn't know how Dryden. He hasn't met Dryden Voss yet, so he doesn't know how this is going to go, and he knows that Dryden Voss is a scary man. But here is the love of his life at this time, and she shows up out of nowhere. His goal was to get back to Corellia, and here she is, unexpectedly. What the hell?
Yeah.
He's completely caught off guard and is on the back foot. And any young man at that age is going to not know how to fucking speak. Because have you ever talked to a guy in his young 20s? They can't speak.
That's us. That is us. 100%.
Never mind. I was going to try and brush past that one. But
you're not yet there.
I was... Wait a day, buddy. Wait a day.
I know. Tomorrow.
Now, I said in my notes, now the central question has gone from can Han rescue Qi'ra from the people who she is oppressed by to can Han rescue Qi'ra from people who she associates with. Now, obviously, Qi'ra doesn't need to be rescued. She's no damsel in distress. But Han still has, I feel like Han still has that fantasy of, oh, what if things went differently 3 years ago? What if she made it out with me? What if we were able to buy the ship? What if we were able to start the life together that we wanted to? And there's a, yeah.
It's definitely the case of two people who were thrown together because of terrible circumstances, their upbringing, and they separated. That, like, the guy who, you know, was able to go off to college while his high school girlfriend stayed in the small town working at the local diner, right? And staying in the trailer park, and he comes back expecting her to be the same person, but they have both grown up in 3 years.
I think that's, sorry, go ahead.
And it was like, and it's, of course she's not the same person. She's had to do things to survive, even if it was just a real world analogy at that point. They're having to do things to survive, having to make ends meet, and making choices that you, as a young person, don't see yourself making. So you have to destroy parts of yourself to survive, just to survive. And she says, this is a game. The only goal of this game is to stay in it. You don't win it. You just stay in it as long as you can. That's the goal.
You win by staying alive. Yeah.
Yep.
I will quickly mention something about, like, Qi'ra's changing, that the good friend of the show, good friend of ours, Alden Diaz, was telling me a few days ago, because he's read Crimson Climb by E.K. Johnston. Spoilers ahead for that book, but Jacob, I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, all good. Go for it.
I don't care.
But you know, we see the Dawn mark on Qi'ra's arm, right?
Yes.
Jacob, you right? The Dawn mark?
Of course. Yeah.
Here's how she got that brand on her arm. She was forced to kill a Quarren in front of Dryden. And as the Quarren was dying, Dryden collected some of that ink from the Quarren, and I think you know what happens next.
How do you get a tattoo?
That's intense. That's crazy.
That's pretty badass, actually. I wonder who came up with that.
Yeah, I will say as well, looping back a little bit to the amazing kind of scenery, you know, the Glup Shittos, the musical duo and everything. It's such a whiplash. The last time Han and Qi'ra, you know, see each other, they're in this gritty, grimy underworld. They're dealing with aquatic slug monsters, and then all of a sudden they meet each other in this perfectly polished, spotless luxury opulence. And then Qi'ra, all of a sudden, she's doing her thing. She's like wearing sophisticated dresses. She's being a diplomat, and it really underscores in a neat way how different the circumstances are, in a way that it does show Han visually. I think it does a very neat job. The way Han kind of Qi'ra fits where she is now visually in terms of costuming. Han, he's more or less, he's got the same style. He's still the scruffy scoundrel, and tells him as much. And I think in doing so, that's almost a little bit of symbolism, if we understand and if we agree that clothes have a lot of symbolic, cultural, anthropological value. She's signaling to him
in film and media, right?
Like, like your story is different from my story now. It's very different.
And you see the mark. They kind of tries to hide it, and L3 will later see that you're committed. Like, of course, the man is not going to talk about it, right? The man isn't going to do it, but it is another female, and L3 would definitely identify as female. She of course, she's the one that brings it up later, because Han is hormones are going off. He's got one thing on his mind, and what she's wearing is not any of it, right?
I feel like he's got two at this point, making it up to her and whatever else he wants to do with her, and also getting out of the deep shit he just landed himself in.
And like a man is completely not at all paying attention to any of. He's single-minded and focused, and is not at all paying attention to any of the things that she has to deal with, right? Because she has responsibilities and commitments and all these things, and he's like, we're going to run away, we're going to do all these things, and not at all like caring about what she thinks, what she wants. It's like, we talked about running away together before, and we're going to still do that, and he's single focused on doing that. And I think part of his getting out of this quagmire with Dryden is his way of also trying to find a way to get Qi'ra out from under at the same time.
And I think, as you said, that moment of his, we see the contrast between where Han's focus is and what Han wants. It really strongly mirrors what you were talking about earlier with Han experiencing the heartbreak for the first time, and that's part of it. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, of struggling to reconcile the person that you knew with the person that is. And that's what Han is going through, and realizing to the truest extent that Qi'ra is her own person, that their destinies may not be as intertwined as he once thought they were.
Absolutely. And it's, I think I have my own personal theory that a lot of times when Star Wars fans don't really like certain aspects of Star Wars is because it hits too close to home to who they were
I feel that.
are. They don't like to see themselves reflected on the screen. They definitely like characters to be one-dimensional and not nuanced. And I think this movie might seem like, oh, it's checking the box. How does he get his name? How does he get the ship? How does he get the gun? And I think none of those moments are all that important. It's just part of the story. Like, the important parts are his relationship with Qi'ra, him getting immersed into this world. Yeah, he grew up in the sewers and streets of Corellia and been an Imperial officer, and so those give him skills that he needs to be good at being a smuggler later on. Right? Like, he's street smart in a way that the Empire doesn't like. He thinks for himself, which the Empire didn't like. But they also refined skills that he wouldn't have gotten had he just stayed on the streets, right? I do think that for the most part, some of the training and exposure, which I think often is the thing that happens when you enlist in the military, and you get exposure to the aspects of the world around you that you don't get if you stayed home or continue to stay in the slums. And that, I think we see all the reasons why Han is who he becomes. It's those ingredients are not always glamorous, right? He is a person with not the best backstory. It sucks that he's a man who does not have connection with his family. Like, why is he living in the sewers and not at home? Is his dad still alive? He talks about like his dad built YT-1300s.
It's ambiguous, but yeah.
Like, it's ambiguous. He didn't have a good relationship with his dad. And it's just, I think that part of his love for the Falcon is his way of staying connected to his dad, because he says his dad built them. And you're just like, okay, like, there's more to be explored there, but does it matter? No, I think it's fun right now to ponder and to speculate on what that means. They do throw away lines in this movie, just like all the other Star Wars movies, that just lend you to be like, oh, I want to know more about that, or at least I'll think about it. And that was one of them, talking about their past, their relationship with their parents, him and Lando, and you're just like, holy crap. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, I never thought I was going to get this perspective in this. I want to quickly go, before we get to what I really want to talk about in this episode, to something that I feel like I have to talk about because I think it's great, but don't get me wrong, it's not what I'm itching to talk about, which is, I want to talk about Dryden very quickly, which is just to say that I think that I'm not familiar with enough with the work of the late Michael K. Williams, who was supposed to play this role originally.
Man. Yeah.
And so I can't, I'm sure he is, I can't judge anything based off that he's done. I'm not very familiar with his work. Paul Bettany nails it. Paul Bettany's so great as Dryden.
Paul is fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and I think one of the things he does in this film that's so interesting is he toes the line between being genuinely threatening and being campy so well. You forget about the other option while he's doing one of the options.
No, it's hilarious.
And and there's such nuance there that with acting, I think he pulled off very well. Given if pulled off well, it could be great. But if pulled off badly, it could look really stupid. But but I think he does the the faux friendliness so damn
he's got a sort of sexy, dangerous charm to him that you're just like,
Yeah.
I'd like to watch you do what you do, but but you also can kill me in a moment. And I think the idea of giving him like alien features that are mostly human, with his stripes on his face that change with his mood, I think was brilliant, because you're not quite human. You're just something just a little bit off about you that is dangerous, and we know that markings like that in nature generally are a warning sign, a danger sign, right?
Yeah.
And I think all those things lead into a response to his performance. If you're going to get an actor to come in at the last minute to take over a role, you choose someone of the caliber of Paul Bettany. Like,
Absolutely.
he's so good.
If I will just say very quickly though, the like pseudo-sexual relationship that's hinted at between him and Qi'ra never really rubbed.
She's done things you couldn't even imagine, or whatever, right? Like,
never really sat right with me, and it just like
but you're not supposed. It's not supposed to. He's a villain.
I know, but it just never not even sat right with me as a comfort level. But like,
he's a creepy dude.
It's one of the things that's hinted at, but never really gotten into with the plot, that I just feel like is there just to be there.
I mean, I think that becomes like a lot of it is his performance, the way he delivers the lines, the way he touches her, and the way they sit close together.
But there's lines like, are you with him? They never say it out. It's a bit of that awkward.
She wouldn't choose to be with him, right? Like, there's no way she wouldn't choose to be with him. Exactly. It is definitely a relationship of oppression. It is definitely.
I just think the relationship could have worked without the pseudo-sexual nature of it. It just feels out of left field and just like there for it to be there.
It's an uncomfortable power dynamic for sure.
It's meant to be, right? Like,
absolutely.
I think it becomes really uncomfortable because we don't ever see men in those relationships in Star Wars. I think the closest we've ever seen anything like that was the Zygarrian arc in Clone Wars. That's the closest I can think of to anything like that in Star Wars.
And even that,
Anakin is fully clothed.
And even that, Anakin, I feel like really could have left anytime he wanted to, because he's Anakin fucking Skywalker.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's the closest
mission.
Yeah. So, it's the closest we ever get.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying even the closest is not.
In a franchise where we have things like Hutt Slayer Leia, then this is not a. But I'm one of those people who, I know that it becomes uncomfortable, but it is just, I work with youth, and I haven't worked with youth for nigh on a decade now, and kids being sexually trafficked, girls just like Qi'ra. I've worked with girls who were just like Han and Qi'ra at that age, and them being sexually trafficked is a reality, and it's sneaking in a little bit into Star Wars. I know is uncomfortable. It's a terrible reality of our world, and I know that we want to go to Star Wars for escapism, but to ignore the fact that things like this happen, it's an interesting line to walk. I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Giving you just a few poison drops into this recipe of a movie, I think, is about as far as you're going to get it outside of a novel. It does suck because it seems very clear. I don't know if EK's book tones that down or in any way. I think if anybody else wrote it, especially if a man had written that book, I think those elements would have been very explicit. I don't think it needs to be suggested any more than it is in this movie. We don't need to.
I just feel like there are just a few. There are a few people like this is for me with this segment of Solo because the last segment of Solo I had some like major structural problems with in terms of just the general story. This one is a few minor beats that I just feel don't really need to be there, and this is the first. There are only two of them, and this is the first one where it's just like. I'm not saying that, look, is human trafficking something that absolutely needs to be addressed more in stories? Absolutely. But this feels like it was just there. It wasn't small enough to be like, it wasn't small enough to be like a throwaway line. And of course it shouldn't be a throwaway line, but it wasn't big enough to be like a plot line. and part of the emotional
I
journey.
think you're thinking about like, the men who were writing this story. How well could they have handled this? I don't. There's all
Yeah.
absolutely. I would not trust any of the men who worked on this, whether it was Chris Lord, Phil Miller, or Larry Kasdan, or Ron Howard, to handle those elements any more deftly than this. It is clumsy.
I will actually
and,
just say that the second minor problem I have with this segment is actually another one where it's like a written by men sort of thing,
mm-hmm.
which is the conversation between Qi'ra and L3.
I don't know. I would love to know more about that, because I don't feel like Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the kind of person to allow a clunky scene like that to be done if she felt uncomfortable, like it wasn't true.
Yeah.
She's a powerhouse, and I know that part of me is, it's very possible that she was just like, oh, it's Star Wars, I get to be in Star Wars, I'm just gonna shut up and play the part, because even if I'm uncomfortable with it, that's very possible. Women are often put in positions where they have to do that constantly, but part of me also believes that she would have said something if it is clunky. It does, but
I will say though, there is one line from that scene I really still do love, and like that it is the redeeming factor for me for that scene, which is of course the fantastic. How would that work?
Yeah.
It works.
Qi'ra's delivery of that question is fantastic, because I'm not trying to like say that this doesn't work, but I'm clearly questioning.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm so fucking confused right now. Now I want to get to what the thing I've really been wanting to talk about for this entire episode. I was asked the most to know she was an Imperial spy. I thought she loved me. My man. I want to gush a bit.
I'm going to be the wet blanket on this.
In a world as a person.
I don't know. I love Donald Glover in everything I've seen except Solo.
Really? Tell us more.
I feel like Donald Glover is not a good Lando.
Really?
That is a take. I respect.
I don't really feel like he. I don't feel like he really did anything more than try to be a caricature of what we think of Lando. He doesn't add anything to the character, and so many of his line deliveries are just bland. I'm like, they are weak, and that's not Donald Glover, and it makes me really just be like, what happened? What happened? That's a terrible line delivery from you, Donald. I see anything else he does, and he's fantastic in Community and Atlanta and all these other things, and you're just like,
my gosh,
like, what happened to this movie? Because you were phoning it in. Like, it is not even like half of his ability. Honestly, it is not half of his ability. And I'm just like, and I think everyone gets starstruck by the fact that it's one, Lando, and two, it's Donald Glover, and then you're just like, but pay attention, and his performances are awful, and I can't stand him in this movie. And then every time I watch it, the worse it gets. And I know that's the absolute opposite reaction to everybody else, but I'm just like, the more times I watch this movie, the less I like it.
Jacob has had takes that my eyes widened at more. So
okay. I love Donald Glover. I love him so much.
I was just gonna say how is this guy, at least for me, do such a great Lando, and do like Atlanta and Community and stuff, and write Redbone? Are you kidding me? This man, how does this man is like one of the people where he's like, how does this man has the same 24 hours a day as the rest of us? How does he do this? Like, he played This Is America on the Falcon for Phoebe Waller-Bridge and his other co-stars. And
that song is fantastic.
It's the person who's trying to take over Billy D. Williams in Star Wars, also playing for you his side project, which is one of the most successul rap records of all time about racial injustices in America. This man is a fucking Mad Lib, and I don't understand. I like it's so much respect for this guy, and Buck, I really respect him. I could not disagree more.
No, that's fine. I know that I'm an odd person out, and I don't know what it is about his performance that I feel this way, and I want to love it. And I don't know. It's such an odd thing for me to like something less and less the more I watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think I can understand what you're saying, even though I disagree. I think the fact that it is the fact that it is Donald Glover, the fact that this is not just inevitably, if you're culturally aware of anything that he's produced, this isn't just Lando. This is childish Lambino. I think the awareness of that certainly affects the way that I watch it. But I think maybe in that sense, Lando in this doesn't have the same opportunities to really do the full spectrum of what Donald Glover can do as opposed to, let's say, Earn in Atlanta.
You know what'd be cool?
Yes.
You know what'd be cool? What if Lando got a movie? Oh wait.
But the idea that Donald and his brother are working on changing this Lando spin-off story gives me hope, knowing what they've done together and like how his writing for Atlanta gives me hope for what they can do for the Lando.
I will fully admit,
whatever that ends up being at the end,
that this rewatch of Solo specifically is the thing getting me most excited for that film, because I
am excited for it. Like, so I know it's weird, like me not liking his performance in this. I still feel like there are many times that I'm just like,
yeah, I know you, like, to some extent, I know you still admire him as like an actor and a writer and stuff like that.
100%. Which is why, again, I am excited for the new Lando, especially now that it is. If they go forward with it in the current iteration of him and his brother working and writing, then I'm even more excited than it would have been before, if that makes sense. And then that's weird, because I said I don't really love his performance in this, but I do love him, and I love what he would do with it with more freedom. And like I would love to see these Calrissian Chronicles, which is what the name should be.
Oh, it 100% should be.
Like, I'm tired of names being like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Solo or Ahsoka. Like,
yeah, no.
Like, they need new names. Disney.
Yeah. No, I just want to. I'm sorry. I love this dialogue and delivery so much. I just want to read some of this just to get it out of my system, which is.
What about me?
Slow down. You might want to quit while you're ahead. Might want to quit while you're behind. Yeah. I like this kid. You're adorable. And I'm serious. And I'm calling. Like, every line of dialogue feels like the best snappy cast in dialogue.
No, and what is great about it though is it is within, like, that scene. I think it's wonderful. I think it's more of the scenes after this and before they get on the Falcon. Those scenes really great on me. Like when he talks to Qi'ra and then when they go to the Falcon, there's something about those scenes that just really get on my nerves, and I don't know what it is. There's something about those scenes just are really wonky.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, those scenes, I do know what you mean, even though I disagree. Yeah. I can admit I know what you mean. It seems like there's a balance here. It's and on the one hand, you don't want to take such an amazing actor and creative force and just say, you just be Lando, be Billy D. Williams 2.0. On the other hand, like, I do think as well that there is something to say, make this character your own, but it's this character. I would be a bit, and I totally trust, with the Lando project coming up, I totally trust Donald Glover to not do this, but I wouldn't just want to see Earn in a Lando costume. Which is to say, I understand that maybe in a few places, or in a lot of it, depending on how you watched it or how you felt about it, they are going a little too much on that side of just be Lando. It feels forced because he doesn't have the same type of presence as Billy D. Williams. He's a different actor, a different kind of force in front of the camera. And I think in the scenes that you're describing, that is where I agree. He veers most heavily. Yeah. The script as well, pushing him in that direction of just do the Colt 45 swagger. Like, just be that.
I'm so glad somebody got a Colt 45 reference in this. But no, I think you actually made me realize this part of, I think, some of my problems with those scenes are definitely those kinds of things, because I do want him to have his own ownership of this role. Absolutely. And again, like I said, I am excited for if they ever go through, knock on wood, with the Lando project, whatever it ends up
Please.
turning out to be, series or movie or whatever. I think it needs to be a movie, but that's just me. But whatever it ends up being, I'm excited. I also think during this part of the movie, the introduction of L3, I think it's hilarious because I think it's the thing that the people who have a hard time with this, the dumbasses of the world, usually are having a hard time with L3, and I think L3 is brilliant. But that
Hey,
might
Phantom
just be.
Menace, I'm gonna say this right now. I'm flipping the finger to them because L3 is a fantastic character. Can I get you anything? Equal Rights is a fucking hilarious.
It's such a great. What if I don't elect to go to Kessel?
My favorite is stuff like that line between with Lando and L3 and Clint Howard's for Allocation. L3, let go of the main man's face. They don't even serve our kind here.
Yeah, it's so good.
Perfect exchange.
It's such a good one. I think also too part of my. It's hard to not. Okay, this is a thing that Star Wars fans, all of us, I think collectively have a hard time with, is not equating the actors with the characters they play. Harrison Ford is Han Solo, Carrie Fisher is Princess Leia, etc., etc., etc. But it is hard for those of us who are immersed in Phoebe Waller-Bridge's career before this movie came out, and I was already a huge fan of hers. Crashing and Fleabag and all these other things that she had done, I already loved her. And her writing on Killing Eve and all these things. And so when you put her into Star Wars, I was super excited. And I know some people don't like their women this vocal and opinionated.
Yeah, and they're what? Look, I forgot how much I loved L3 in this film.
Oh,
I think I like L3 more in this film after Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh, she is brilliant in that movie. Helena is so good.
I loved Helena Shaw in that film. I know this is not a popular opinion, but I'm gonna fucking say it. She could take over for Indiana Jones any day of the fucking week, and I need
there to be a Helena Shaw film series. Just gonna say,
or a TV show or something.
Yeah,
I know Harrison does have a unique energy as Indiana Jones, but I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge could bring a new take on Indiana Jones with Helena. And
you don't need to. It would be within the same universe. It doesn't. You don't need to recast. That's a whole other thing, right? I know that people had a hard time with Alden, which I think Alden does a great job. Like I think
Alden's fantastic.
Brilliant in this.
I love Alden so much.
And I think Jacob has the good point that Alden has the time, the screen time, and the story work put in to give him the chance to take the Han Solo role and make it his own. Donald doesn't have as much screen time or writing put into it in this movie to make it his own. I do feel like by the end, his relationship with Han is very fun. I think a lot of my problems are early on in his in the story, and not so much later. I do one of the best exchanges. I hate you, I know. I know it's dumb, and I actually honestly don't think about it as like an Easter egg or homage. I forget about it. It's just such a great exchange that I'm like, oh yeah, that's also a nod to later in the series.
It's a damn good. Mm-hmm. I do want to get to specifically with. I'll say one more thing about the Spock game before we move on, which is just that I love THERM scissor punches. It was one thing I've heard. I haven't gotten into THR that much, but I've heard that THERM scissor punches is a part of Phase 2 of the High Republic.
Yes, the amazing part of the High Republic.
I'm interested in seeing him more there. What I was going to say is I love these recontextualization moments in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's happened 3 times to my count in the new canon.
Okay.
Actually, let's say 4. We're going to say 4 in the new canon. With Solo, actually, all projects we're going to get ahead to at some point. One of them in 10 years and the other one pretty soon. Solo, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka. These moments of, oh, you thought this went this way? It did, but some other stuff happened too. This is. Oh, you thought this was going to be the game where Han won the Falcon? No, that's another game. The first time he lost, and we didn't tell you about that.
I think that's
Obi-Wan
awesome.
is. Oh, you thought that Obi-Wan hadn't seen Vader since Mustafar? No, that's not true. He saw him these other times in like almost exactly halfway in between there. Andor is. Oh yeah, I forgot we told you that he was born on Fest. We were fucking with you. He was born on this other planet, and Fest was a cover.
Yeah.
And then Ahsoka was, hey, remember that Rebels epilogue? Remember, did you know that Sabine was recovering from a stabbing right before that epilogue.
It is pretty good. No,
Stuff like that.
I
that
do love
fits
that. It's
canon.
part of me knew going into this scene. I'm like, because it's so early in the story, there's no way he wins it here. There has to be another one later. And wasn't sure the first time I was watching this whether or not he would have it by the end of the Falcon by the end of the movie. I love that he gets it at the end of the movie though. Like that just makes me.
I think the game on Midi and Prime at the end is fantastic, and I think it's a nice capstone for the film.
And just again playing on the relationship he has with Lando, but it also makes me think that there's no way that we've seen the last of the two of them together before Empire. There definitely has to be. I'm sure there's comics and stuff. I forget. Timelines sometimes get fucking weird.
Canon is
considered
also
canon and legends and
the canon's also running into the legends problem a little bit, where every time you write a story of Han and Lando in between before Empire Strikes Back, you have to end it with them being pissed off at each other to explain the opening scene of Empire.
Yeah, so it becomes a toxic
problem.
But it's a toxic relationship. They love each other. They just can't get their shit together. And that's another thing I think is very fun about Lando in this movie is the charm that they give him in this particular iteration that isn't always in every iteration of Lando. You can see him charming. You can see the intention to make him a pansexual character because the way he interacts with people, the charm that he has is he flirts with everybody, but in a safe way. Right, he'll oh, you're adorable. That was cute. All these things, and it's like it's the weird, fun kind of way of we're gonna see how they respond, and if it goes a little more, maybe we'll flirt for real. Like after this, that I love that you have to like any queer person who's trying to flirt with somebody they think is cute, but they don't know where they fall on the spectrum. You have to test the water a few times, and it takes some time. And you can see he will throw. I think it's instinctual at this point for him that he just does it with everyone. It's a good way to disarm everyone. And I just think it's funny that he flirts with Han just a little bit.
So I will say that as much as I was talking last week about how much I liked the fact that Solo didn't place too hard of an emphasis on the checklist stuff, on the how he got his gun stuff, how he got, all that kind of stuff. The Falcon deserved it. The Falcon fucking deserved it.
I loved it. I love Lando's version of the Falcon. It's nice, it's clean.
And specifically with the Star Wars theme blaring in the background, that was 100% deserved.
Can we talk about that one shot? Can we talk about that one shot of the camera looking up at just for one moment, Han and Chewie, they're standing right under the cockpit. You get that familiar kind of lighting. I'm not sure, hearkening specifically to maybe the being in the maw, the space slug, I can't remember, but just that moment, that shot with that main theme motif swelling in the back. Goosebumps. That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah,
that was such a good moment.
If that doesn't make you feel something, you have no soul.
I don't know, right?
So
it's such a good moment. Do I wish the lighting were a little better? Yes, I do. But I'm not mad at the choice.
There's something very original trilogy about it.
Yes.
I will say. And I think that's intentional.
I think that's one of the great things about this movie specifically is the way it homages and feels like it fits into that. And for me, anyway, it fits into that version of Star Wars.
Jacob, I actually have a question for you relating to dialogue that happened, the piece of dialogue that happens later in this film. And this is how you describe something like this. Jacob, I know this is an opinion that is controversial to many, but I want to ask how you feel about The Last Jedi, using a line from this film. And I think I
don't like The Last Jedi. I don't agree with The Last Jedi, but I accept The Last Jedi. And most importantly, I embrace people who love The Last Jedi and who resonate with The Last Jedi, such as my lovely co-host Eli.
It's kinder than my opinion about Tross.
I have my thoughts. I have my thoughts about Tross as well.
Anyway,
I have my thoughts about Tross
anyway,
as well.
I don't like it. I don't agree with it. But I accept it is one of the funniest lines in this movie.
It is a very good, very quotable. Like I quote it often or send that GIF very often in conversations. Usually when we're talking about our opinions about the movies or shows that we
absolutely
like or don't like. And that's the great thing about Star Wars is that there is so much to enjoy that like the stuff that you don't really doesn't really matter because there's like literally hundreds and hundreds, if not almost thousands of stories for you to go and enjoy.
If you don't like, I'm picking a movie at random Rogue One.
That was not random, sir. I know you.
You can't fool us. We're familiar with your game.
I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game. I will say, so once we get inside the Falcon, we have what I think one of the most beautiful shots in this movie. That fucking jump. That fucking jump. Man, that fucking jump.
There's a lot of wonderful character moments in this because it builds out the relationship between so many of the characters. Yeah, we can talk about the visuals, but like the character moments in this segment of the movie are very fun because you learn more about Han and Qi'ra. You learn about Han and his dad. You learn about L3 and Lando. But Beckett, I think, is interesting because he doesn't get a lot of lines, but he's watching everything, and he is finding every weakness he can for every person.
The line of it's another moment that almost gets me. I forgot this is one of the main things I'm taking away from this movie, and I think this will on our retrospective episode we have a bunch of prompts that we answer, and one of them is what is the thing you noticed for the first time in the rewatch. I forgot how funny this movie is. I genuinely forgot how funny this movie is, and chief among those examples is now think. Do you want to make that move? Do you want to make that move? Okay, you made that move. It's
such a good moment.
Yeah,
it's like I talking about things like that. It's the first time I think, and I've done this multiple times, but watching again, I had a very similar experience where I was teaching kid to play checkers and had that exact moment. You're like, you want to make that move? You sure you want to make that move? I'm like, okay,
you make that move.
I'm gonna jump. I got all your guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic. Let's see. The Acadi's Maelstrom is another one of those things that looks just gorgeous. I have this as my background here for this episode.
Yes.
It's fucking gorgeous, and like the shots and like the cinematography and the humor of this movie makes a lot. Like I've heard a lot of people say that Solo is their comfort Star Wars movie, and with the cinematography and humor, I can 100% understand why.
This is again like the pulls from like influence from Legends. I think for those of us who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s era of Star Wars expanded universe, like there's so much there and it feels comforting. But if you haven't, it's this. I feel like you still can get some of the same. Like you can feel it too, and like the Acadi's Maelstrom being influenced by the Maw, and Kessel being more or less what you would imagine it looks like from the books and on screen. It's crazy how you can get a planet. They keep finding new ways to do new planets in Star Wars and new visuals, and I never get tired of seeing them doing. All right, we're gonna do this new thing, or we're gonna do that new thing, and we've not seen this yet. And it is a good way of doing a new planet without we're gonna do another desert planet, which I know most people are annoyed with.
Yeah, I will just say I only have one more thing to say before we get on to Kessel. I'll open up to you two afterwards, which is that scene with Han and Qi'ra in Lando's closet is such an interesting scene to me because we know that one of the lines in that scene was a George line. We don't know what it is,
really,
but George visited the set of Solo on the day they were filming that, and I think if I had to guess, it would be Beckett's. Am I interrupting something? I think that's what it is.
It's so funny because this time we watched this again in preparation for this episode. My husband had pointed out, he says, "It's crazy that we have this scene in this so close to where Han and Leia kiss," and I'm like, actually, this is exactly where Han and Leia kiss because the implication is that this closet is no longer there. They've rebuilt it, and that George.
That's good. I'm not familiar enough with the land.
That closet does not exist. That closet, my understanding, that closet no longer exists, and that is exactly where Han and Leia kiss. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but
that's damn good.
It's such a great moment.
That moment just generally feels like.
And then am I interrupting something? It's so.
Yeah.
It's a post. I love. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
It is like poetry. It rhymes. Ready to jump into Kessel, both of you?
Yeah. I will say I missed talking about it on Vandor. Excuse me. on Vandor, but Han does hashtag shameless Rebels plug from the resident Rebels fanatic of In a Galaxy. The VCX 100. He flexes the same kind of ship as the Ghost.
As the Ghost. I was going to bring that up. I forgot.
I got that the first time I watched the movie. That got such a big gasp from me because the Ghost is my ship.
Yeah.
This was like the first Ghost anybody can get for the longest time. Was like a little paper Ghost.
Oh, nice.
With the DVD release of the Spark of Rebellion. Like there were no toys at that time of the Ghost, and so this was the only one you can get for the longest time. And then there was another Easter egg that actually got a bigger gasp for me, which we already spoke about. The Masters of Terrakasi,
which is actually not the Easter egg that has the biggest gasp for me, which we'll get to later, which is one of my favorite lines in the entire movie. But before we get to that, we have to get to one of my other favorite lines in the entire movie. I am Oksana Florin, Deputy Assistant Administrator to the Vice-Admiral of the Federation of Trade Route, Allocation, and Monetization.
I've been trying to memorize that I still don't have it.
I think all of us have. I remember on the Podathon trivia challenge with the Damons and our good friend of the show, the Dark Jedi, and other good friends of the show, Marie Wilson and Zach Burkett and Evan Bushkar. That was a question to write out, and nobody got it because I don't think any tried to memorize that. And to all EC players, yes, actually, I'm saying try to memorize that. There is a not insignificant chance that Connor and I will write that as a 5.
That's such a terrible question.
This is why I don't usually compete, guys. This is why I keep my distance from EC sometimes.
I got
you're at trivia
That's as far as I got.
But there are a few people who have suggested that this is a subtle jab from the cast-ins at George for the complicated politics of the prequels. And they can think that if they want.
I think it could be a fun jab at both his crazy dialogue and the politics of the prequels.
Honestly, I just don't care because it's just so fucking funny.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite part is not.
But it's not just that. This is the other thing that I think it's also an homage to her Khaleesi line, right? Because she's just listing off all the
Daenerys
parts.
Stormborn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is actually the answer that Jared gave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I one of my favorite things is not just like that imagining Emilia Clarke having to memorize all of that, but it's the Pikes buy it. It's that it's so overly long, complicated, and stupid that the Pikes actually believe her.
The Pikes have never been known to be particularly smart. I don't know how they're one of the. I don't know how they've made it this far.
Look, Silman would disagree with you. They captured Silman. They got Silman locked up for 10 years.
Yeah,
no one knew it. No one knew a fucking thing about that guy until.
Why did they keep him alive?
And Anakin came.
Look, I think it's almost a Star Wars tradition. Just characters bluffing their way into places they shouldn't really be in the most absurd ways possible.
But you have to think like people who most people don't get paid enough to give a shit enough about their job.
Exactly.
So they're like and crime syndicates, there's so much fear that you're going to piss somebody off. Darth Vader's going to choke somebody. You might get stabbed by Dryden Voss, right? All of those things. So if you piss somebody off, you don't want to piss anybody off. So you're doing your best to walk the line of it. I'm doing my job, but I'm also not trying to piss you off. And so he's like, if I say no and it turns out to be true, I'm going to get. But if I do say no and it turns out that they're fake, and I also all the things you're trying to walk that line. So I don't. Then again, Pikes are not particularly smart. Again, why do they keep Silman alive all those years?
Good question.
Not smart.
Yeah, we already did talk about Terrakasi, which is just crazy.
It's just the best. So if you guys were old enough to have a PlayStation 1 in the late 90s, like it was a terrible Mortal Kombat inspired game with Star Wars where you could play as all the main characters: Tusken Raider, a Gamorrean guard, Mara Jade, Jodo Kast.
But can you tell me, this is the question that never would be asked in EC, obviously because it's Legends. Do you know what the name of the Gamorrean guard is?
I forget. They had a weird name. I forget. It was like.
So said weirdly, perceived in a certain way, this could sound extremely inappropriate. but the name was Hor.
Right. No, that was the
H-O-A-R.
That wasn't that the sand trooper, wasn't it? Or the sand person?
No, that was the Hor.
That was the Gamorrean. Okay.
The Gamorrean guard, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
No, you're right. It was the Tusken Raider.
Okay.
The
I remember.
The Gamorrean guard is. Let's see. I'm looking him up right. Fuck. Anyway, I will just say also, this sequence of Chewie temporarily leaving is my other moment in this film. It's my other moment with this, where it just feels with the Qi'ra and like with the Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn stuff, where it's. I think they were trying to make it into a bigger moment than it was, but the Chewie leaving doesn't really do much for me for the story being told, because it's not. It's cool that Chewie wants to, and it's a great moment that Chewie wants to free Wookiees enslaved there, but it just happens to me, and it's just done, and then we don't really think about it for the rest of the movie.
It should. Okay, so maybe they should have made it a bigger emotional moment, but I don't think there was ever a moment where. I think it would have felt cheap if they made it a bigger moment, and the reason is because you know that Chewie comes back. You know that they're together in 10 years. You know that they're together when he dies. Making it a bigger moment would be cheap. But
I feel like they made it a decently big moment, and that's the thing. I feel like they made it a big moment only for them to like course correct 5 minutes later.
It was the moment. It was the moment that like clearly they had a stronger bond than what is there, right? They haven't known each other more than like a handful of days. So the bond is it's to show that maybe they became faster friends than most other people would have in that amount of time. But also like Hans understand Chewie needs to do this, and we don't have the relationship where I'm gonna go and fight with him. I'm gonna continue the job. Where you see the pragmatic side of Han, and I feel like that was maybe the moment, but I do feel like they should have committed one way or the other. Like,
it was really strange.
Yeah.
My last thing I have for this entire thing is one of my favorite Easter eggs in this film, one of my favorite lines in this film, and specifically I'd want to talk about this with regard to a certain film that's coming out in the next few years.
Okay.
The Calrissian Chronicles, Chapter 5, continued. Personally, I wasn't all that impressed with the Sharu. No sense of humor or style. Nonetheless, there L3 and I were, deep in their sacred temple, and that's where we saw it. Mm-hmm. If you had asked me a deep cut reference I thought we were going to get in Solo, I would have said, okay, maybe Tobias Beckett would have Garrus Shrike as an alien or something like that.
Yes.
I would have never guessed that Lando would canonize L. Neil Smith's Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu. I'm trying to...
When he said Sharu, that was one that I was like, there's this segment of the movie, there's so many
That is
Easter
my Leo
eggs.
DiCaprio moment of this film.
Okay.
It was
the whole movie.
I have read that. I have not read that book, but I'm trying to get my hands on that book. And also, he mentions the Ocean Delph, which is the Flame Wind of Ocean, which is another one of those books. Mm-hmm. But from what I've read about that book, and I've read some things about that book, honestly, if you canonize that film, mix up a few things so it's not exactly like Legends, and do that as the Lando movie, that would be fantastic.
Yes.
That is honestly what I want. Is a
that story would definitely be improved with the presence of L3.
with L3, who's basically Vuffy Raw, but better.
Yes, L3 is better than every droid except for maybe Huang.
That's a hot take, but I was just gonna say that Neo Vuffy Raw, who's better and fighting for droid rights. Lando, these mystical Sharu, Roker Gepta, like you have all the ingredients for a truly great Lando story. A canonized Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu is what I want for that Lando film. Something that ridiculous. Even if not the Lando film, if we get a canonized version of Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu, this is something I wish actually would be done with some Legends books. Mind Harp of Sharu, Path of Destruction, Darth Plagueis. Literally pay the writers whatever you need to clean up a few things to make it canon, and make those fucking books canon.
Okay. Yeah.
Not that the being legends it makes them any worse, but if Darth Bane can have that act, like if Darth Bane, as we know him in Legends, can have that flexibility to be in other Star Wars stories, if the Sharu have that flexibility to be in other stories, if stuff from Plagueis has the flexibility to be in those other stories,
right? I want them to. I think there are a lot of things that need to come out of Legends into the canon. I think that would go a long way to pleasing other aspects of the fandom, and I don't think that's wrong because it also is going to please the other side of the fandom who is, yeah, we like those things, let's add them and make them work within the current canon.
Yeah. And you don't have to.
This movie is a good example of that. This movie is a good example of that.
And I don't think they. And I don't agree with the idea. Like I agree with our idea that they don't need to add everything. I prefer Mount Sorrow to stay in Legends where it fucking belongs.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Things
Wasn't
like
an Alan Moore story?
I don't know who that was, but
it feels like an Alan Moore story.
but here's a good example. How they toned down the Gendai for Ravis and Survivor. Perfect.
That.
Dirge is canon, but now Dirge is not ridiculously overpowered. I love ridiculously overpowered Dirge, but
now there's Mace Windu, right? Mace Windu isn't as powerful as he is in that animated series. I love the idea that like Legends is Legends because
good. Anyway.
Like Legends, these Legends are things that may or may not have happened, and they give us things like that in the current canon with the anthology, the George Mann Legends and Myths and Fables and all those books, the short story anthologies that George Mann got to write. Which, like, did this story happen? Didn't it? It's that Luke Skywalker one that they came out around The Last Jedi, right? Like, did this story happen with Luke Skywalker? Is it canon? Is it not? Maybe not. I don't know. And I love stories like that because it could be true, it could not be true. And Star Wars Legends was renamed that because they could be true, they may not be true. And it does make me think that there are major characters who should make the move over because you don't have a legend like that and them not become a canon. That's just my opinion. But
any of you have anything else for this chunk of Solo?
I love that this 40-minute segment ends with Anthony Daniels' cameo.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I missed that. I missed Cat. I fucking missed Cat.
It literally was. What is the line? Is the exact on the streaming right at the 40-minute or that hour and 20-minute mark was the "Stay with me, Sagwa, keep up," and that's Anthony Daniels.
Oh yeah,
I didn't. In every live-action Star Wars movie.
He's in every Star Wars movie.
Oh yes,
he's in the Clone Wars. Yeah,
yes.
He is in that movie. Fortunately, but not a huge fan of that movie. But
that's a whole different conversation.
That's but yeah, we get to the end of this very extensive. But I think this again. I think this part of the story is a great setup like end of the first act, set up for the second and third acts of the film that we'll get to.
It is one thing. It's like right before everything gets really intense, right? Like,
right before everything.
Within 3 minutes, one of the major characters is gone, and they're the hot seat. We'll
talk about L3 when next episode.
I will say for new characters, I'm sure this was talked about last time, but maybe it should have been Val and not Tobias that survived, right?
Sure.
Like, there's a universe where that's finding a way to make her live through the second part of this movie would have been fantastic.
Discussed last episode, and yes, I completely agree with you.
He wasn't in this part of the movie, but R.I.P. Rio, I love that dude. He's the best. And then, of course, coming up next, the death of my favorite new character from this movie, and that sucks. My other favorite character from this movie is not in this segment. Enfys Nest.
She is a little bit because there's that one.
Oh right, yes, she is. Yes, she
which
is.
I didn't get to mention, but I do. I will just briefly mention that I love specifically how Enfys Nest is framed so well as a villain, even though she isn't one.
Nope.
But we get tricked so well into thinking she is one for the first 2/3 of this film.
hopefully something you guys talk about, and I'll let you guys talk about this. The next one is the novelization of Solo adding an epilogue that should.
Oh yes, I will. We'll talk about.
Like, make sure. I'm just saying, the epilogue of Solo should have been filmed, and you guys can talk about that. Next
Oh
time.
yeah, 100%. I agree.
Great petition.
I agree with you.
Even, Lafferty, thank you for that. It's the best part of that novelization.
Jacob, if you don't know what we're talking about, we'll get to it next episode.
You get it's a great epilogue that is not in the movie.
It's a fantastic epilogue. I think we should get to the penultimate segment of the show, which is our interview questions for our first time guest, just to get to know you and your opinions on Star Wars a little better. Although I will say that this one's a little weird because I am pretty acquainted on your views on Star Wars, but we have 10 questions for you, all Star Wars related. First question: who is your favorite Star Wars character?
Oh, that's Ahsoka Tano.
Fantastic.
You can see the Ahsoka snap around me. Yeah,
just quick and easy. Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, those are almost all Ahsoka. Yeah. All the Funkos. I didn't see that at first. Wow.
Yeah, most of them. It's assigned Moff Gideon and then the new Sabine, just because I didn't have anywhere else to put her and I didn't want her on the floor, so I put her up there.
All right.
What is your ranking, Buck, of the Star Wars movies? If you don't have a ranking handy, a top 3, a top 5, give us something.
I know Buck. He has a ranking.
My ranking may be controversial. My personal favorite, just because I was caught up in the Star Wars fever at the time and in nostalgia. It's not what's best, it's what's my favorite, is The Phantom Menace. Things have changed over the years, so I say Phantom Menace, Rogue One, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Solo. What am I missing? Empire Strikes Back, Attack of the Clones, New Hope. It's boring now. Did you watch it? It's slow. I love it. There's so much there, but sometimes like right now my current ranking is pretty low. And then the Clone Wars movie and then the sequels all fail together. So they don't get ranked. They're there. I love them, but they fail together. That's a controversial take, but
what is your favorite non-movie Star Wars story that you think more people need to experience?
New Jedi Order of Traitor is my favorite book I've ever read. I love Matthew Stover, and I literally reread this every year.
Tributes to the King, Matt Stover. Tributes to the King.
Stover. Shatterpoint was good. His Revenge of the Sith novelization is great. His Luke Skywalker novel grew on me. I didn't like it at first, but like I read it now and I'm like, oh, actually, this is actually the perfect Luke Skywalker story post Return of the Jedi. I'm like, oh, that's really good. But his writing, the way he talks about the Force, it's poetic, and I think this is the book that I think really began my journey from walking away from my religion. I know that sounds weird, but it is. And this book changed my life, and I will read it every year. Read Traitor, Matt Stover.
Fantastic.
Everybody has one. Who's your favorite Star Wars background character / Glup Shitto?
I'm not really good at this one because I don't like what is background character. I think in this movie it'd probably be Warwick Davis's character. I like the Weasel. Shape, like is it Weasel? It is Weasel.
It's Weasel.
Gosh,
it's the same.
It is Weasel. Yes, he is. But I love his helmet in this movie. His look is cool. I want that to be an action figure. I think that would like a 6-inch. Obviously, it won't be 6 inches, but a 6-inch series action figure. Just the detail on that helmet is so good. And yes, because he is in the pod race scene in The Phantom Menace.
Absolutely.
All right. Buck, in your opinion, what is the coolest Star Wars species?
I think the Zeltrans don't get nearly enough love. I wish they would canonize those a little more. I think they are canon, but I would love to see a story really representing them.
Zeltron?
Zeltron, yeah. Did I say Tran?
Okay.
Zeltron.
Yeah. I'm just checking just to see. They are technically canon, but they haven't got a lot of love.
Yeah, not a lot of love, no. Legends is fun. I think it would use some of those elements into current canon. It'd be really interesting stories to tell.
What would your job be in the Star Wars universe? Your Star Wars dream job?
My dream job or what my actual job would be? Because those are two different questions.
Give us both. Fuck it.
Because God knows I'll probably be like the janitor or something in Star Wars. I have no skills. Right? I think my dream job would definitely be working on I want to be Jocasta Nu, but like not a
Mm.
bitch. I would still be
Fair.
bitchy. Queer man, I'm gonna be a little bitchy, but I would not be like, it's not in the Jedi archives, it doesn't exist. No. I know that there are things that we do
That was
not
a
know.
moment.
Shut up. Yeah, I want to be the if not there, like somewhere else, like a really big library. I love libraries, man.
All right.
Wait, Eli.
So you mentioned this quote earlier, and it's one of our favorite quotes here from Phantom Menace documentary. That's like poetry. They rhyme. Every stanza sort of rhymes to the last. Hopefully it'll work. What is your favorite example of that in Star Wars? Could be from anything.
On the spot there, I don't know. I know I have an answer for this, but I think there's some new examples in Ahsoka that are very fun with between her and Anakin. There's a new one where she's standing in the medical bay with Sabine in episode 2 that is reminiscent of Anakin from Obi-Wan. I think that's very fun. Just she's got the mannerisms of Anakin, and just seeing how that her relationship with him is still so important to her all those years later, after being betrayed by him and all the hurt that he caused. Like, I just still like her. They frame her in the same way, because she's not like, she is a character who is the Ahsoka the Grey in that moment, right? Like, she's in the gray, and like framing her similar to Anakin, like with a person who is struggling with where they fall, light or dark. I think that is brilliant, and I think most of us experience moments of things like that where I want to be good, but sometimes I just want to be bad, or maybe I don't want to make the right choices. And now the moment I'm thinking of is Ahsoka is struggling with her relationship with Sabine. Right? The right choice is to take her on as a Padawan, but I don't really want to do the work to make her my Padawan, and I relate with that.
What is your favorite Star Wars planet, Buck?
I know I used to say things like Naboo because it was easy, but I would love to live on Aldhani because it feels very. I would love. Okay, you get to see the eye every 3 years, and so that's fantastic. But also, like, the weather feels right to me. They filmed in the UK, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and the weathers are close enough.
Yeah.
So I get the like cold, wet, gray skies, and that feels like home for me. I think Aldhani would be fun.
Oh, it's mine again. I'm sorry. Oh, my bad. If you could take one object or one force power or something from Star Wars, have it, use it in the real world, what would that be and why?
Does it have to be canon?
No, I guess not. I suppose not.
I want the little force crystal thing from the Lego Star Wars holiday special that Rey has, so she can open portals and travel through time.
That's a damn good answer. Honestly, that's a damn good answer.
I'm like, oh, I want that. I think about that constantly.
But that's crazy.
I think that comes from my love of Doctor Who. So I like
What's
the idea of
What's that fucking planet? That's a damn good planet.
I forget.
It's a good name. It's a damn good name.
I meant to watch it last night, but time got
Cordoku.
Yeah, Cordoku.
Cordoku.
It's such a like a
Fuck,
funny.
That's a good name.
That's a good one.
Fuck,
yeah.
That's a good name. God damn.
What's the crystal thing called? Do we know? That's a good one too. Like I said, I meant to watch it last night. I forgot.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'll look into it. And then finally, our patented question on this show, where all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you a character, and you just tell me how you pronounce this character's name.
Okay. Zam Wessel?
Thank you.
Correct.
The correct pronunciation. Still not over it.
Is there a different pronunciation?
Indeed, there is. So some people, she introduces herself in Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the 2002 video game. Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Zam Wessel.
Because I think at that time they were still doing it with 2 S's, because there are early iterations where before the movie had come out where her name was with 2 S's.
That's
so
interesting.
I can see, there are iterations of her name.
Wikipedia has both as correct pronunciations. Jacob and I can't stand that one. We've had it out with Devore from the Large Review of the Force, who says he pronounces it Wessel.
I get
Everyone
really annoyed.
Everyone we've had on the show agrees with us. So
Yeah. I get annoyed with some other pronunciations I hear people say where I'm like, that was not the way it was pronounced in the movie. So where the fuck did you get that pronunciation from?
Also,
and the biggest one is plagius. What?
No,
Who has ever said
plagius.
plagius? It's plagues.
They-
That's the big. That's the one that annoys me.
All right, Buck, where can we find you?
I am by Republic on Twitter because I came back. Shh, don't tell them after I was canceled. Or Highball 2814, pretty much anywhere else. I guest on podcasts. I do not have my own podcast. Maybe someday, but I don't think that I need to do that right now. And I like hanging out with these guys and stirring the pot on Twitter.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Buck, for joining us this episode. Next week, we are going to be covering the final 47 minutes of Solo.
Yes.
From 120 till the end. And I know you and I are very excited to dive into more Solo, a Star Wars story, the end of season 15 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. I forgot to say that this episode, of course, I think I'll edit this in the beginning. This is episode 117 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. There we go. So what episode it is. But we'll be back next week. In the meantime, you can listen to us everywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere at In a Galaxy Pod. You can find everywhere I am at my Linktree, linktr.e/_OGFan327 to find out everywhere I am personally. Go watch Epic Confrontations. By the time that this is out, we'll probably be ready to record our next match, Jerry Cable versus Scotty Holiday, which I'm very excited for. And I think, unless there's anything else, may the Force be with you always.